Ambassador Marcus Kane stood before the towering crystalline spires of the Galactic Council chamber, his weathered face betraying nothing of the storm brewing within. Around him, representatives from a dozen species whispered in their native tongues, their eyes and sensory organs focused on the human delegation with barely concealed disdain. The Zephyrian Council speaker, its gas-filled membrane pulsing with indignant colors, addressed the assembly. The human species continues to violate Galactic Regulation 47b by expanding into restricted sectors. Their colonies now number over 300 worlds, far exceeding the agreed limit of 50. Kane's aide, Lieutenant Rebecca Torres, handed him a data pad. The numbers were worse than expected. The Council wasn't just discussing colonial expansion, they were preparing to declare humanity a rogue species. Furthermore, the speaker continued, its harmonic voice making the chamber walls vibrate, their military vessels have been detected in 17 systems claimed by our member species. This aggression cannot continue. High Counselor Vexthera of the Ketheri Empire, her 6 arms gesturing dramatically, added her metallic voice. The humans show no respect for natural order. They terraform dead worlds, breathe poison atmospheres, and thrive where others perish. They threaten the balance we've maintained for millennia. Kane stepped forward. The chamber fell silent. Even translator devices seemed to pause. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of human struggle. Honored counselors, he began. Humanity has followed every treaty and restriction you've placed upon us since joining this council 30 years ago. We've paid your taxes, followed your trade routes, and kept our military within set boundaries. Yet you continue to expand. The Zephyrian began. We expand into dead systems, Kane interrupted, his voice hardening. Worlds you've written off as uninhabitable. Systems you've deemed worthless. We take nothing from you because we take what you cannot use. The Ketheri counselor's mandibles clicked in what Kane had learned was laughter. You speak as if desperation were virtue, human. Your species clings to life in hostile environments because you lack technology to compete for worthy worlds. Kane's jaw tightened. Behind him, Torres placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, a reminder to stay diplomatic. But diplomacy had limits. We've received reports, the Zephyrian speaker continued, that human colonies have begun mining operations in Outer Rim territories. These are restricted zones, designated as galactic preserves. Those systems have been dead for millions of years, Kane replied. No life, no atmosphere, no resources any of your species can use. We're making them productive. That is not your decision to make, High Counselor Vexthera snapped. The Galactic Council governs all expansion in this galaxy. Your species was granted membership on condition that you would respect our authority. The chamber erupted in agreement, clicking, whistling, and harmonic resonances of approval. Kane waited for silence. Then let me be clear, he said, his voice carrying to every corner. Are you ordering humanity to abandon colonies where millions have made their homes? Are you demanding we surrender worlds we've spent decades terraforming? We are offering you a choice, the Zephyrian speaker replied, its membrane glowing ominous red. Comply with galactic law or face the consequences. Kane looked around at assembled representatives. Some avoided his gaze. Others stared with predatory interest. All had underestimated humanity since first contact. And if we refuse, then you will be declared a rogue species, High Counselor Vexthera said with satisfaction. Your trade privileges revoked, diplomatic immunity stripped, and any council member free to take action against human interests as they see fit. The threat hung like poison in the air. Kane felt the weight of every human life in the galaxy. 400 million souls spread across 300 worlds, all depending on his next words. How long do we have to decide? 72 hours, the speaker announced. After that, the vote will be called. Kane nodded slowly, then turned to his delegation. We'll need time to consult with Earth and Colonial Administration. Of course, the Zephyrian agreed, its membrane pulsing with smugness. Though I should warn you, Ambassador, the vote is merely formality. The decision has already been made. As the council session adjourned, Kane and his team made their way toward the exit. Torres leaned close to his ear. "Sir, they have us outnumbered 50-1. If they declare us rogue—" "I know," Kane replied quietly. "But they're making the same mistake everyone makes with humans." "What's that?" Kane paused at the chamber's exit and looked back at the assembled alien dignitaries, still celebrating their perceived victory. "They think we're bluffing." The secure communication chamber in the human embassy was stark compared to the ornate council halls. Functional and efficient, designed for one purpose: getting information to Earth faster than light could travel. Kane sat before the quantum entanglement communicator, watching as Earth's leaders materialized in the holographic display. President Elena Rodriguez, her silver hair pulled back severely, spoke first. "Marcus, we've reviewed the council's demands. They want us to abandon 60% of our colonies." "More than that," Kane replied grimly. "They want us to acknowledge that they control human expansion forever. This isn't about colonies. It's about ensuring we never become a threat." Admiral James Harrison leaned forward. "What's the military situation if they declare us rogue?" "Grim," Torres answered. "The Ketheri Empire alone has 40,000 warships. The Zephyrians control the largest trading networks. The crystalline hegemony has planet-cracking weapons. And us?" the president asked. Kane exchanged a look with Torres. 300 colonies scattered across 200 light-years. Our largest fleet is the 3rd Colonial Defense Force, 800 ships, mostly converted cargo vessels and mining platforms. "Jesus," Harrison muttered. "We're talking about genocide." "They won't need genocide," Kane said quietly. "They'll cut us off. No trade, no technology transfers, no access to shipping lanes. The outer colonies will starve within a year." President Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. "What are our options?" "Comply or fight," Kane said simply. "There's no middle ground. And if we fight, we lose. But maybe we make them pay for it." Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, Director of Colonial Research, joined the conversation. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with determination. "Marcus, there's something you need to know. Something the council doesn't know we know." Kane straightened. "Go on." "We've been monitoring their communications for months. This isn't about colonial expansion or galactic law. 3 major council species are facing resource shortages. Their populations have outgrown their traditional territories. "So they want ours," Torres breathed. "Exactly. The worlds they're demanding we abandon? They've already drawn up colonization plans for 17 of them." Admiral Harrison's expression darkened. "They're not enforcing galactic law. They're planning a land grab. And using their legal authority to justify it," Dr. Reeves confirmed. "The Ketheri have been preparing a colonization fleet for 8 months. The moment we abandon those worlds, they'll move in." Kane felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How long have they been planning this?" "From the beginning," Dr. Reeves said. "We've found evidence suggesting they've monitored human expansion since our first colonies. This ultimatum was always the endgame." President Rodriguez closed her eyes. "They played us." "No," Kane said, standing. "They tried to play us, but they made one critical error." "What's that?" Kane looked directly into the camera, his expression harder than Torres had ever seen it. "They assumed we'd go quietly." The president leaned forward. "Marcus, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about something my grandfather used to tell me," Kane replied. "He was a soldier in the Third World War. He said the most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose." "The council has overwhelming military superiority," Admiral Harrison warned. "If we fight them directly, we'll be annihilated." "Who said anything about fighting them directly?" Kane asked with a cold smile. Torres felt a chill. She'd seen that expression during the border wars. It was the look Kane got when he stopped being a diplomat and remembered he'd once been a combat officer. "Marcus," President Rodriguez said carefully, "what exactly are you proposing?" Kane walked to the chamber's viewport and stared out at the massive orbital station housing the Galactic Council. Thousands of ships moved in carefully regulated patterns, following rules that kept galactic civilization running smoothly. "They want to declare us a rogue species," he said without turning around. "Maybe it's time we started acting like one." "You're talking about breaking the treaty," Dr. Reeves said quietly. "I'm talking about tearing it up and shoving it down their throats," Kane replied, turning back to face the screen. "They want to see what humans do when backed into a corner? Let's show them." The silence stretched for nearly a minute before President Rodriguez spoke again. "What do you need?" Kane smiled, and Torres realized the Galactic Council had just made the biggest mistake in their 10,000-year history. "Everything," Kane said simply. "And I mean everything." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of encrypted communications and frantic preparation. While the Galactic Council celebrated their impending victory, humanity's vast colonial network came alive with deadly purpose. In the Outer Rim territories, mining platforms that had been extracting rare metals for decades suddenly shifted operations. The massive fusion reactors that powered terraforming operations began producing something far more dangerous than atmospheric processors. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching as her engineering crews completed modifications to the ship's cargo holds. What had once been a peaceful merchant vessel now bristled with weapons systems cobbled together from mining equipment and industrial fabricators. "Captain," her first officer reported, "we've got confirmation from the Titan shipyards. They've converted 47 cargo haulers in the last 36 hours. Santos nodded grimly. Across human space, the same scene was playing out. Miners became munitions experts, cargo haulers became warships, and peaceful colonists became soldiers. On Earth, Admiral Harrison stood in the secure briefing room beneath United Earth headquarters, addressing humanity's top military commanders via hologram. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me be clear about our situation," he began. "In 16 hours, the Galactic Council will vote to declare humanity a rogue species. When that happens, we'll be fair game for every alien species in the galaxy." The faces around the table were grim but determined. These were officers who had led humanity through the border wars, established the first colonies beyond the solar system, and fought to build the civilization the Council now threatened to destroy. "What are our orders, sir?" asked General Patricia Chun, commander of Colonial Defense Forces. "Operation Prometheus," Harrison replied. "Every asset, every resource, every human in the galaxy. We're going to remind the Council why Earth never fell to invasion." Meanwhile, on the Council station, Kane was having a very different meeting. Ambassador Thexal of the Rigelian Confederation had requested a private audience. The Rigelians' insectoid features were difficult to read, but Kane had learned to recognize the subtle antenna movements that indicated distress. "Ambassador Kane," Thexal began in its translated mechanical voice, "I must speak with you unofficially." "Of course," Kane replied, though Torres noticed his hand moving closer to the recording device on his belt. "There are those on the Council who believe this course of action is unwise," the Rigelian continued. "Your species has shown remarkable adaptability. Some of us remember the border wars, when humans held off 3 different alien invasion fleets simultaneously." Kane kept his expression neutral. "The border wars were a long time ago, Ambassador." "Were they?" Thexal's antennae twitched skeptically. "Your colonies in the Vega system still bear scars from Ketheri orbital bombardment. Your people have not forgotten." "What exactly are you trying to tell me?" The Rigelian leaned forward. "That perhaps a peaceful resolution might still be possible, if humanity were willing to accept certain restrictions." Kane studied the alien's face carefully. This was either genuine negotiation or a trap designed to make humanity appear weak before the vote. "What kind of restrictions?" "A formal limit on colonial expansion, mandatory Council oversight of all terraforming operations, and tribute." "Tribute." Torres couldn't keep the anger from her voice. "A percentage of all colonial production, paid annually to the Council treasury, to ensure compliance." Kane was quiet for a long moment, considering the offer. It would save millions of human lives. It would preserve most colonies. It would allow humanity to continue existing as a spacefaring species. It would also make them slaves. I appreciate the offer, Ambassador, Kane finally said, but I'm afraid it's too late for that. Thexel's antennae drooped. Then you will fight? We'll do what humans have always done when threatened, Kane replied, standing up. We'll survive. As the Rigelian ambassador left, Torres turned to Kane with concern. Sir, that might have been our only chance at a peaceful solution. Kane activated an encrypted channel to Earth. President Rodriguez's face appeared instantly. Marcus? How did the meeting go? They offered us slavery with better working conditions, Kane reported. I declined. Good, the president replied without hesitation. Because Admiral Harrison has something to show you. The display shifted to show Harrison beside a massive holographic star chart. Thousands of points represented human colonies, trade routes, and military assets scattered across the galaxy. Marcus, Harrison began, we've been preparing for this moment since we joined the Council. Every colony world, every mining platform, every cargo hauler has quantum entanglement communicators. In 12 hours, we'll have real-time coordination across our entire civilization. Kane felt his pulse quicken. What are you planning, Jim? Harrison's smile was predatory. We're going to teach the galaxy why you don't back humans into a corner. The star chart shifted, highlighting shipping lanes, communication relays, and resource extraction points throughout Council space. Kane realized he was looking at the galactic economy itself, and every point where humanity intersected with it. My God, Torres whispered, you're going to shut it down. Not shut it down, Harrison corrected. Take it apart, piece by piece. Kane stared at the display, understanding dawning. Humanity might be outnumbered and outgunned, but they'd spent 3 decades integrating themselves into every aspect of galactic civilization. They'd built the infrastructure, operated the shipping lanes, and maintained the communication networks that kept thousands of species connected. When do we start? Kane asked. The moment they vote to declare us rogue, Harrison replied. That's when they'll learn the difference between compliance and cooperation. Kane looked out at the massive council station, with its thousands of representatives preparing to condemn humanity to extinction. They have no idea what's coming, do they? None whatsoever, Harrison confirmed. They think they're dealing with another primitive species that will beg for mercy. Kane's expression hardened as he thought about his grandfather's stories, about the border wars, about every time in human history when the odds had seemed impossible. They're about to learn that humans don't beg, he said quietly. We bite back. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from over 300 species filled the crystalline amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonics that translation systems struggled to process. Kane sat in the human delegation section, a small box barely large enough for 5 beings, dwarfed by the massive sections allocated to major council powers. It was a deliberate reminder of humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy. High Counselor Vexthera called for order, her 6 arms gesturing regally from the central podium. Esteemed representatives, we gather today to address a threat to our ancient traditions and sacred laws. The chamber fell silent except for the subtle hum of translation devices. The human species, she continued, her metallic voice carrying clearly, has repeatedly violated the terms of their admission to this council. They have expanded beyond allocated territories, established colonies in restricted zones, and shown flagrant disregard for our authority. A wave of agreement swept through the chamber, the harmonic equivalent of applause from dozens of different species. The Zephyrian speaker's membrane pulsed with righteous indignation. For 30 years, we have shown patience with this young species. We have guided them, educated them, and welcomed them into our ancient civilization. They have repaid our generosity with defiance. Kane felt his jaw clench. Torres placed a restraining hand on his arm. Furthermore, the speaker continued, intelligence reports indicate that human colonies have been conducting military exercises in violation of galactic disarmament treaties. Their cargo vessels have been modified with weapons systems. This was news to Kane, though he kept his expression carefully neutral. Apparently the council had better intelligence than he'd thought. One by one, the major powers presented their case. The Avian Federation spoke of human colonies disrupting migration patterns. The Aquatic Union complained about terraforming projects affecting water distribution. The hive minds expressed concern about human chaotic individualism spreading to their client species. Finally, High Counselor Vexthera returned to the podium for the closing argument. "We do not take this action lightly," she declared, though Kane noticed she was struggling to hide her satisfaction. "But the human species has proven incapable of coexisting peacefully within our galactic community. They must be declared rogue, their colonies forfeit, and their people relocated to appropriate reservations where they can be properly supervised." The word reservations hit Kane like a physical blow. They weren't just planning to seize human worlds, they were planning to intern the entire species. Torres's hidden communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Earth. She glanced down, then went pale. "Sir," she whispered, "Admiral Harrison is requesting confirmation to proceed with Prometheus." Kane looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces, all watching with predatory interest as humanity was condemned to extinction. "Tell the Admiral," he said quietly. "The vote isn't over yet." Vexthera raised her primary arms for silence. "We will now hear from the accused. Ambassador Kane, you have 5 minutes to address this council." Kane stood slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the chamber upon him. When he reached the speaker's platform, he looked out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Ancient species that had ruled the stars for millennia, all united in their desire to see humanity kneel. "Honored counselors," he began, his voice carrying clearly, "you speak of our violations of galactic law. You cite our expansion into restricted territories. You condemn our militarization of civilian assets." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "But you have not mentioned the real reason for this proceeding." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the chamber. High Counselor Vexthera leaned forward, her mandibles clicking with irritation. "Explain yourself, human." Kane smiled coldly. 3 of the major council species are facing critical resource shortages. Your populations have outgrown your traditional territories. You need new worlds to colonize, new systems to exploit. The murmurs grew louder. Several representatives exchanged nervous glances. "The worlds you're demanding we abandon, you've already drawn up colonization plans for them. This isn't about galactic law. This is about a land grab, dressed up in legal pretense." "Lies," Vexthera hissed, but Kane noticed that several other representatives were no longer meeting his gaze. "We have intercepted your communications," Kane continued, his voice growing stronger. "We know about the colonization fleets already en route to our systems. We know that this vote is just a formality to justify theft." The chamber erupted in chaos. Through it all, Kane stood calmly at the podium, waiting for the noise to die down. When it finally did, his next words fell into the silence like stones into still water. "You want to declare humanity a rogue species? You want to seize our worlds and enslave our people? You want to see what humans do when we have nothing left to lose?" He looked directly at High Counselor Vexthera, then at every major power representative in the chamber. "So be it." Kane walked back to his delegation box and activated his hidden communicator, sending a single message to Earth. "The die is cast." High Counselor Vexthera called for order, her voice shrill with rage. "The human ambassador's theatrics changed nothing. We will now proceed to the vote." The ancient ritual began. One by one, species cast their votes. The Silicon Collective, guilty. The Avian Federation, guilty. The Aquatic Union, guilty. The final tally was overwhelming. 247 species voted to declare humanity rogue. Only 12 abstained. 3 voted in humanity's favor. By the authority vested in this council, High Counselor Vexthera announced triumphantly, "The human species is hereby declared rogue. All treaties are void, all protections revoked, and all human assets subject to immediate seizure." Kane stood up one final time. "Counselors," he said, his voice carrying an edge that made several representatives step back involuntarily. "You have just made the worst decision in galactic history." He turned to Torres. "Signal Admiral Harrison. Tell him it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you piss off the descendants of apex predators." As the human delegation filed out, Kane didn't look back at the celebrating aliens. Behind them, the representatives continued their celebration, unaware that across the galaxy, 400 million humans had just received the same message. The treaty is void. Execute Prometheus. Show them what we really are. Admiral Harrison stood in the command center beneath the Himalayas, watching as status reports flooded in from across human space. The massive holographic display showed the galaxy in real time, with human assets highlighted in blue and council forces in red. "Admiral," reported Captain Sarah Mitchell, "we have confirmation from all colonial sectors. Operation Prometheus is go." Harrison nodded grimly. "Begin Phase 1. Target all Council shipping in human systems." Across the galaxy, the Council's celebration was about to turn into a nightmare. On the trade station orbiting Kepler 442, Administrator Yuki Tanaka watched as Kethari cargo haulers approached with their usual arrogance. The massive ships carried industrial equipment that had been manufactured in human colonies and was now being liberated by their new owners. "Docking control," came the translated voice of the Kethari captain. "We are here to claim salvage from the rogue human colonies." Tanaka smiled coldly and activated the station's defensive systems. "Kethari vessel. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" "The Council has declared your species rogue. All human assets are forfeit." "That's true," Tanaka agreed pleasantly. "But you see, this isn't a human asset anymore. This is now a free port, operating under no flag and recognizing no authority. You have 10 seconds to reverse course before we blow you out of space." The cargo bay doors opened, revealing converted mining ships bristling with weapons systems. The converted vessels, designed for breaking apart asteroids, made short work of the Kethari ships. Within minutes, debris was all that remained of the Liberation Fleet. Similar scenes played out across a dozen systems. Council forces expecting to waltz into abandoned human colonies instead found themselves facing desperate defenders who had already been written off as dead. But the real blow was yet to come. In the Centauri system, Captain Santos led a flotilla of 50 converted cargo haulers. Their target wasn't a military installation. It was the Galactic communications relay that connected the entire Council network. "Captain," her weapons officer reported, "the relay is defended by a Zephyrian battle group, 12 heavy cruisers." Santos studied the tactical display. Under normal circumstances, 50 cargo haulers wouldn't last 5 minutes against a proper military force. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Execute Samson Protocol." The converted ships spread out in a seemingly random pattern, their modified engines producing massive sensor shadows that confused Zephyrian targeting systems. When the battle group moved to engage, they found themselves fighting not warships but flying bombs. Each converted hauler carried a cargo hold full of antimatter, the same fuel that powered their faster-than-light drives, but reconfigured as the largest explosive devices in human history. The first ship to reach the battle line detonated before the Zephyrians could destroy it. The explosion consumed 3 heavy cruisers instantly. The second and third ships followed moments later. Within an hour, the communications relay, a structure that had taken the Council 50 years to build, was nothing but radioactive debris. Across the galaxy, dozens of similar relays went dark as human suicide squadrons eliminated the infrastructure that held galactic civilization together. On the Council station, chaos reigned. "How is this possible?" High Counselor Vexthera demanded, her 6 arms gesturing frantically at tactical displays. "They're primitives. They should be begging for mercy." Admiral Kextar studied the reports with growing alarm. "Counselor, we may have underestimated the humans' capacity for organized resistance. They're cargo haulers and mining platforms," the Zephyrian speaker protested, its membrane pulsing with panic. "By not fighting like a military, Kextar replied grimly. They're fighting like cornered animals. Every ship is a potential kamikaze. Every installation is booby-trapped. They're not trying to win. They're trying to take us down with them. The reports kept coming, each worse than the last. The Rigelian trade network had lost 60% of its transport capacity. The Silicon Collective's processing centers had gone offline. The Avian Federation's migration coordination system had been sabotaged. Sir, a communications officer reported. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet approaching Sector 7. Captain Santos's face appeared on screen, weathered and scarred, but her eyes burned with determination. This is Captain Maria Santos of the Terran Free Fleet, she announced. To all Council forces in this sector, you have 30 minutes to withdraw to minimum safe distance before we destroy the gravitational anchor holding your artificial wormhole open. Admiral Kextar's blood ran cold. The gravitational anchor in Sector 7 maintained the wormhole that connected the Ketheri Empire to the Galactic trade network. Without it, their entire civilization would be cut off. She's bluffing, Vexthera hissed. Destroying a gravitational anchor would require the entire energy output of a star. Which is exactly what she has, Kextar finished quietly. Those aren't cargo ships anymore. They're stellar mass weapons. On screen, Santos checked her chronometer. 29 minutes, Admiral. The transmission cut off, leaving the Council leadership staring at tactical displays showing the human fleet moving into position around the anchor station. They wouldn't dare, the Zephyrian speaker whispered. The energy cascade would destroy everything in the system, including themselves. Kextar looked at the reports from across the galaxy, the suicide attacks, the infrastructure destruction, the coordinated campaign of mutual annihilation. They're already dead, he realized. We declared them rogue. We condemned their entire species. They have nothing left to lose. Admiral Kextar activated communications, broadcasting toward the human fleet. Captain Santos, this is Admiral Kextar. We are prepared to discuss terms. Santos's voice came back immediately, cold and implacable. Admiral, the time for negotiation ended when you voted to declare my species rogue. You have 26 minutes to evacuate this system. Captain, please. Destroying the anchor will cut off food and medical supplies to billions of beings. You'll be committing genocide on a galactic scale. There was a pause before Santos responded, and when she did, her voice carried the weight of 4 billion years of evolution and 30 years of Council oppression. Admiral, you should have thought of that before you decided to make us extinct. On Earth, Admiral Harrison watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Phase 1 was exceeding all expectations. Sir, Captain Mitchell reported, 67% of the Council's communication infrastructure is offline. Their trade networks are in chaos. Several member species are requesting emergency aid. Harrison nodded. Our casualties? Approximately 40,000 personnel. All volunteers. The price was heavy, but not unexpected. Every human who had participated knew it was a suicide mission. They had done it anyway. Signal all remaining assets, Harrison ordered. Prepare for Phase 2. Show them what happens when humans stop playing by their rules. 3 days after the vote, the Galactic Council was learning a hard truth about humanity. Declaring war on humans was easy, but surviving the consequences was proving impossible. In the emergency session chamber, High Counselor Vexthera stared at reports that read like a catalog of galactic disasters. The humans hadn't just struck back. They had systematically begun dismantling the infrastructure that held their civilization together. Report, she commanded Admiral Kextar, her 6 arms trembling with barely controlled rage. Counselor, the situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections. The Admiral began, his carapace showing stress fractures. The humans have destroyed 47 major communication relays, crippled 36 trade networks, and eliminated our logistics capabilities in 12 sectors. How many ships have we lost? Kextar hesitated. Over 3,000 vessels, including 700 military craft. The silence was deafening. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned disbelief. 3,000 ships? The Zephyrian speaker whispered. its membrane flickering between colors of shock and disbelief. To cargo haulers and mining platforms? They're not fighting like any species we've encountered, Kextar explained. Every engagement is a suicide attack. They ram our vessels, detonate antimatter charges, and use their industrial equipment as weapons. They've turned their entire civilization into a weapon. Ambassador Thexel stood up, his antenna twitching with agitation. Perhaps we should reconsider our position. The humans might be willing to negotiate if we offered to restore their council membership. Absolutely not, Vexthera shrieked. We cannot show weakness to a rogue species. Then what do you propose? Demanded Ambassador Quelf. They've cut off trade routes to 17 systems. My people are already facing shortages. Before Vexthera could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red as automated systems announced. Incoming transmission from unknown vessels. On the main display, a face appeared that made every council member freeze. It was Ambassador Kane, but not as they remembered him. Gone was the diplomatic uniform and careful demeanor. He wore the simple gray jumpsuit of a colonial worker, and his eyes burned with cold determination. Greetings, Galactic Council, Kane said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. I trust you've been enjoying the fruits of your democratic process? High Counselor Vexthera found her voice first. Kane, where are you? What do you want? Kane smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm exactly where you put me, Counselor. Outside the law, beyond your authority, and completely free to act as I see fit. You're terrorists, the Zephyrian speaker protested. You're destroying innocent civilians. Are we? Kane's expression didn't change. Because according to your vote 3 days ago, there are no innocent humans. We're all rogues now, remember? Fair game for any council member. The chamber erupted in angry voices, but Kane continued speaking over them. I'm transmitting to inform you of a change in the rules of engagement. Phase 1 of our response is complete. We've demonstrated that declaring war on humanity carries consequences. Phase 2 begins now. Admiral Kextar leaned forward urgently. What is Phase 2? Kane's smile widened. We stop running. The transmission shifted to show tactical displays that made every military officer in the chamber go pale. Across the galaxy, human assets that had been scattered and defensive were reorganizing into coordinated fleets. For 30 years, Kane continued, humanity has followed your laws, paid your taxes, and accepted your limitations. We built our colonies in the systems you declared worthless. We mined the asteroids you couldn't use. The display showed mining platforms detaching from asteroids, their massive industrial arms retrofitted with weapons systems. Research stations were moving under their own power, revealing hidden propulsion systems. What you never realized, Kane said, is that we weren't just building colonies. We were building an entirely new kind of civilization. One that doesn't need your trade routes, your communication networks, or your approval. Captain Santos appeared on screen beside Kane. Her face streaked with battle damage, but her expression determined. Council Station, this is Captain Santos commanding the Free Terran Fleet. We are currently holding position at the edge of your system with 400 converted vessels and enough antimatter to crack this station like an egg. Panic spread through the chamber like wildfire. Representatives began demanding evacuation procedures while others called for immediate military response. You're bluffing, Vexthera hissed. You wouldn't dare attack the council station directly. Kane's expression grew cold. Counselor, 3 days ago you condemned 400 million human beings to death. Do you really think we have anything left to fear from galactic opinion? The truth hit the chamber like a physical blow. They had indeed voted to eliminate humanity as a galactic presence. What do you want? Ambassador Thexel asked quietly. Justice, Kane replied simply. You want to see what a rogue species looks like? We're going to show you. The display shifted again, showing the positions of human fleets throughout council space. What had seemed like random defensive positions now revealed themselves as carefully planned strategic deployments. Then we continue the war, Kane said simply. Captain Santos, Please demonstrate our resolve for the Council. On the tactical display, one of the human vessels moved toward a small asteroid near the Council station. The ship's industrial mining laser fired once. The asteroid simply ceased to exist. That was a mining laser, Santos explained conversationally. We have 400 ships, each carrying industrial equipment designed to dismantle stellar mass objects. The Council station is substantially smaller than a star. Kane stood up, preparing to end the transmission. You have 48 hours to consider our terms. After that, we begin Phase 3. What's Phase 3? Thexel asked, though his tone suggested he didn't want to know. Kane's smile was arctic. We stop being reasonable. 47 hours and 36 minutes after Kane's ultimatum, High Counselor Vexthera stood once again before the Galactic Council. This time, however, the chamber felt different. Representatives who had been confident and arrogant just days before now whispered nervously among themselves, their attention constantly drawn to tactical displays showing human fleets positioned throughout Council space. The reports had been devastating. In less than 2 days, the human campaign had brought galactic commerce to a virtual standstill. Supply lines were severed, communication networks remained crippled, and several outer rim species had already begun negotiations with local human commanders for basic necessities. The chair recognizes Ambassador Thexal of the Regellian Confederation, Vexthera announced, her voice lacking its usual authority. The insectoid diplomat rose slowly, his antenna betraying his nervousness. Fellow representatives, I believe we must face the reality of our situation. The humans have demonstrated capabilities we never suspected. Their response has exceeded every projection. They're primitives with stolen technology, protested Ambassador Vorthan of the Crystalline Hegemony, though his usual confidence was notably absent. Primitives who have brought our entire civilization to the brink of collapse in less than a week, Thexal replied sharply. Perhaps it's time we reconsidered our definition of primitive. Admiral Kextar stepped forward to address the assembly. Representatives, I must report that our military assessment has been sobering. The humans are not fighting a conventional war. They have transformed their entire species into a weapon aimed at the foundation of our society. He activated a holographic display showing the galaxy-wide situation. Red indicators marked disabled infrastructure, severed trade routes, and ongoing human operations. They are systematically destroying the systems that allow our civilization to function. And they are succeeding. The Zephyrian speaker's membrane pulsed with distressed colors. Surely we can mount a counteroffensive. Our combined fleets outnumber them significantly. Yes, Kextar agreed grimly, but they are not concentrated in traditional military formations. To eliminate them all would require us to destroy every piece of industrial infrastructure in human space. Then that's what we do, Vexthera declared, though her voice lacked conviction. Counselor, the Admiral replied quietly, human space encompasses 300 star systems. The industrial capacity there provides 37% of the galaxy's raw materials, 62% of terraforming technology, and 89% of deep space mining operations. Destroying it would cripple us as much as them. The weight of those numbers settled over the chamber like a funeral shroud. For 30 years, humanity had quietly made itself indispensable to galactic civilization. A new voice cut through the subdued discussions. Perhaps, came the translated words of Ambassador Kane, it's time we discussed this face to face. Every head in the chamber turned toward the entrance, where Kane walked calmly into the assembly hall. He was flanked by Captain Santos and 2 other humans, and notably, he was completely unarmed and unescorted by any council security. How did you get aboard this station? Vexthera demanded. Kane smiled pleasantly. We built the docking systems, Counselor. We know how they work. The casual admission sent a chill through the assembly. If humans could infiltrate the council station itself, you have no legal right to address this body, protested the Zephyrian speaker. You're absolutely correct, Kane agreed. We have no legal rights, no diplomatic immunity, and no protection under galactic law. You made sure of that with your vote. He walked to the center of the chamber, ignoring the weapons that several security personnel were discreetly drawing. "I wouldn't," Captain Santos advised the guards conversationally. "If Ambassador Kane doesn't signal our fleet every hour, they have orders to assume he's been harmed." Kane nodded approvingly. "You see, when you declare an entire species rogue, you remove all the civilized constraints that normally govern diplomatic relations. We're no longer bound by your laws, your customs, or your expectations of reasonable behavior." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. "You wanted to see what humans do when we're backed into a corner. We don't surrender, we don't beg for mercy, and we don't go quietly into extinction. We adapt, we fight, and we make sure that anyone who threatens us pays a price they'll never forget." Ambassador Thexal stepped forward. "What do you want from us, Kane?" "I want you to understand what you've done," Kane replied simply. 3 days ago, you voted to condemn 400 million human beings to death or slavery. You decided that our species had no right to exist as free beings in this galaxy. His voice grew harder. "But you made one critical error. You assumed that declaring us rogue would make us weak. Instead, it made us dangerous." High Counselor Vexthera gathered what remained of her authority. "We can offer you a settlement. Limited autonomy in exchange for cessation of hostilities." Kane laughed, and the sound made several representatives step back involuntarily. "Counselor, you still don't understand. We're not here to negotiate our surrender. We're here to dictate the terms of yours." The chamber erupted in outraged protests, but Kane continued speaking over them. "The human species hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council permanently. We reject your authority, your laws, and your right to govern any aspect of human civilization. Furthermore, we claim sovereignty over every system where humans currently reside, regardless of your previous territorial designations." "Impossible!" Vexthera shrieked. "We'll never recognize such claims." "You don't have a choice," Captain Santos interjected. "We're not asking for recognition. We're informing you of reality." Kane activated a portable holographic projector, showing the current disposition of human forces throughout the galaxy. "As we speak, human fleets are securing the space around every one of our colonies. We're establishing our own communication networks, our own trade routes, and our own defensive systems. The age of human dependence on Council infrastructure is over." Ambassador Quelth leaned forward urgently. "Without galactic trade networks, both our civilizations will suffer. Surely some accommodation can be reached." "An excellent point," Kane agreed. "Which brings us to our second announcement. The Terran Colonial Alliance is prepared to establish trade relations with any species that wishes to deal with us as equals." He gestured to one of his companions, a woman in her 50s with the bearing of a seasoned administrator. "This is Director Elizabeth Morgan, our new Secretary of External Relations. She's prepared to discuss bilateral trade agreements with any species interested in maintaining economic ties with human space." The implications hit the chamber like a thunderbolt. The humans weren't just declaring independence. They were offering to replace the Council's economic functions. "You're trying to split the Council," Vexthera accused. "We're offering alternatives," Kane corrected. "Some species will choose to maintain the old system. Others will prefer direct relationships with human territories." Director Morgan stepped forward. "I should mention that human space produces 68% of the galaxy's antimatter fuel, 43% of rare Earth elements, and 91% of the specialized alloys required for faster-than-light travel. We're prepared to guarantee supply contracts to any species willing to recognize Terran sovereignty." The chamber fell silent as representatives rapidly calculated the implications. The humans weren't just threatening to destroy the galactic economy, they were offering to rebuild it on their own terms. Kane began walking toward the exit, his delegation following. As he reached the chamber doors, he turned back one final time. "Oh, and counselors? You might want to start learning to maintain your own infrastructure. Our maintenance contracts expire at the end of the month, and we won't be renewing them." As the human delegation left, the chamber sat in stunned silence. Outside the viewport, the human fleet remained in position, no longer a threat but a statement of fact. High Counselor Vexthera slumped in her chair, the weight of failure crushing down on her. Around the chamber, representatives began the whispered conversations that would reshape galactic civilization. The age of the Galactic Council's absolute authority was over. In its place, a new order was emerging, one where humanity stood as equals, not subjects. And it had all begun when they thought the humans were bluffing. Epilogue 6 months later. Ambassador Kane stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching as ships from 24 different species docked at the bustling trade hub. The station, built in the Proxima Centauri system, had become the unofficial capital of what the galaxy now called the Terran Colonial Alliance. Captain Santos, now admiral in the newly formed Terran Space Force, joined him at the viewport. The Rigelians just signed their third major trade contract this month, she reported. The crystalline hegemony is requesting permission to establish a permanent embassy. Kane nodded, unsurprised. The economic advantages of dealing directly with human territories had proven irresistible to many species. And the Council? Santos's expression darkened slightly. Still holding together barely. High Counselor Vexthera was removed from office last month. The new leadership is making noises about renewed dialogue, but nothing concrete. They'll come around eventually, Kane predicted. They have to. Half their member species are already trading with us independently. Through the viewport, they could see the construction scaffolding around the new shipyards, massive facilities that would soon produce vessels designed entirely by human engineers, free from the technological restrictions the Council had once imposed. Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? Santos asked quietly. Kane considered the question seriously. The war had cost tens of thousands of human lives and disrupted the galactic economy for months. But it had also secured humanity's independence and established them as a major power in galactic affairs. I think about the alternative, he replied finally. If we had accepted their ultimatum, humanity would have become a client species. Our children would have grown up as second-class citizens in their own galaxy. Santos nodded, remembering the Council's plans for reservations and tribute payments. Besides, Kane continued with a slight smile, we tried to warn them, sir. Kane turned from the viewport, his expression showing a satisfaction that had been 30 years in the making. We told them we weren't bluffing. Outside, the ships of a dozen species continued their commerce under the protection of human space defenses, in a galaxy where Earth's children had finally claimed their rightful place among the stars, not as subjects, but as equals who had fought for and earned their freedom. The Galactic Council had thought they were calling humanity's bluff. They had been catastrophically wrong.